Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40K Imperial Guard Tactics video. So today's video I'm going to be doing another one of my advanced infantry tactics videos. So I've done a few basic ones, we're going to do a couple of advanced ones, and then I'll probably go back to doing some of the basic weapon tactics. But for now, let's focus on one of my more traditional infantry tactics, which is the Mordian Melta Hedge. For those of you that don't know, the Mordian Melta Hedge is a tactic that I developed in 6th and 7th edition. I didn't 100% come up with myself. I saw some old battle reports from a chap on Daka, although admittedly his battle reports were sort of mostly 5th edition and a bit of 6th edition. And he played, he was called like Ilarios, and some of you may have heard of him. And he had like the Folian first, really cool army. I really miss reading his battle reports. I must have read each one of them like 3 or 4 times. Really cool. They're a bit outdated now, unfortunately, because he never did any for 7th edition, and obviously 8th edition is massively different. But they're still a good read. They're still very fun. But he sort of toyed with this idea, but sort of gave up on it, and I took it a bit further, which was this Melta Hedge tactic, and it's one which I have used and refined and basically for the longest time, for pretty much all of 6th and 7th edition, it was my go-to tactic, and it was really good. Now, I'll go over its origins quickly, and then I'll sort of go over how it's changed now for 8th edition. So, it originated from the fact that melta guns were cheap. Back in the day, melta guns were only 10 points and plasma guns were 15 points. And it originated on the fact it was sort of a evolution of my go big or go home tactic. So what I would find was that I needed weapons that would hit hard and do a lot of damage, and melta guns obviously did that. Now, what I tended to do with my Mordian units I would move them forward constantly every single turn, and then I would get into melta range by sort of turn 3 or turn 4. And then I would melta my opponent, and then when my opponent inevitably counter-attacked, I would have meltas on Overwatch, on a 6+ Overwatch. So the thinking being, if my opponent charges multiple units to try and shut down as many of my infantry squads, he's going to be charging 3 or 4 melta guns, 3 or 4 las cannons, and out of those 6 to 8 shots, you're probably going to get 1 or 2 good hits with the melta guns. That means you're probably going to kill something, and that is sometimes all it takes to break an enemy charge. Sometimes all you need to do is just absolutely destroy, just kill 1 or 2 models from an enemy charging unit, especially if it's a Space Marine unit, Sanguinary Guard, Death Company, or something more mainstream, Vanguard Veterans, Terminators. I know I play a lot of Blood Angels, so I face a lot of really hard as nails assault units. So I figured if you can kill Sanguinary Guard and Death Company on Overwatch, then you can deal with things like Terminators as well. So that was a general premise. Make sure that you're hitting, make sure that you're wounding. Make sure that if you hit something that you're going to wound it, you're going to kill it. Now, with 8th edition, a few things have changed. I would say the Melta Hedge is still really powerful, especially with the Mordian trait. Okay. It's absolutely, it's definitely really good, the Mordian Melta Hedge. But there's sort of 2 ways it's changed. One, Mordians now, if we're all ranked up nice and pretty, get to Overwatch on a 5+, which means that the Melta Hedge has doubled in effectiveness. Basically, you're getting 16% more likelihood that you're going to hit. So you've gone from a 60% chance to a 33% chance, which is really good. So yeah, basically, it's already really powerful. And it makes Mordians, the Mordian Melta Hedge, it makes Mordians the absolutely #1 anti-assault army. And we've seen that. We've seen that in one of the recent battle reports I put up. Blood Angels, dedicated assault force, goes up against my Mordian Mordian units and gets absolutely torn to pieces. You know, tabled by turn 3, I think it was, or turn 4, like brutal. Very, you know, playing against my regular Blood opponent, and we normally have really, really, really close games. So it was quite, it put a lot of voodoo in my opponent that my Mordian Melta Hedge worked so well against him. Now, the second thing that's changed about the Mordian Melta Hedge is that plasma is now cheaper than Melta. And it gets the rapid fire, which means if you've got a couple of plasma guns available and the enemy's charging you, you're almost guaranteed to get a hit. So there's a real sort of tricky decision to be made now. Before, it was always going to be the Mordian Melta Hedge because Melta was cheap. You didn't mind losing Melta. But now Melta's at 12 points, the plasma guns are 7 points. You know, definitely feel like it should be renamed maybe the Mordian Plasma Hedge. Doesn't really have the same ring to it though. However, there are a couple of things to take into account. The whole point of the Mordian Melta Hedge is to, if you're getting charged by something, just to make sure you absolutely kill it. And especially if you're getting charged by, you know, Space Marine or something, you absolutely want a Melta gun because it wounds on 2s and they don't get an armor save. At most, they'll probably be getting like a 5+ invulnerable save if it's a regular Terminator, or 6 up feel no pain, or 6 up save. You know, I mean, generally speaking, the enemy's not going to get a save. That's, you know, but I could definitely see if you wanted to take the Mordian Plasma Hedge instead, then that's not a bad idea at all. So there are the two ways it's changed. The Mordian has changed somewhat as well, with the fact that vehicles can now contribute. And in fact, Mordian vehicles are actually better at Overwatch than Mordian infantry. If you take a Mordian tank and you make sure there's another Mordian tank within 3 inches of it, and you've taken las cannons on that thing, you've taken maybe a demolisher cannon or something similar, or maybe battle cannon might do, and then a couple of multi-melters, you are hitting on a 5+. You use defensive gunners. One of your vehicles can hit on a 4+ with all its big firepower. That's really, really potent. So, speaking of vehicles, there's one last thing that makes the Melta gun potentially better than the plasma gun for the more, and you know, will hopefully retain the name of Mordian Melta Hedge, which is the fact that vehicles now are perfectly okay. Sorry, my cat's begging for my attention. Go on, kitty. Right. The one thing is that the vehicles now are really, really good at being in combat. Often, your opponent has no qualms with throwing a vehicle into combat. So, having a Melta gun can make all the difference, because if you have a plasma gun on Overwatch, yeah, you can do 2 damage, but you're probably not going to kill that vehicle. If you've got a Melta gun or a couple of Melta guns and you get a couple of lucky hits with the Mordian Melta Hedge, you can blow a vehicle up, and then you can still fire Overwatch against anything else your opponent was firing in. So, and I mean, if you're a traditional Melta Hedge player, you're not really going to notice the difference between the 2 points and the 10 points that you were paying. I know Plasma's really popular this edition, but I'm still a big proponent of Melta. I know it's expensive, but, you know, generally speaking, there's very little which can survive a Melta gun. And also, the Melta gun's firing on full whack all the time. Plasma gun might be strength 8, 2 damage if you overcharge it, but sometimes you just can't afford to overcharge it. Sometimes you don't have the insurance of rerolling ones to hit, and sometimes that's when you need a Melta gun, and that's when the Melta Hedge is most effective. What you've got to remember, the last point, is that the Melta Hedge is an anti-assault tactic. So yes, the plasma gun will get rapid fire engine. Yes, the plasma gun can fire at 24-inch range. But what you've got to remember is it's an anti-assault tactic. And a lot of armies out there can get a turn 1 assault on you. Okay, a lot of them can get a turn 1 assault. And it can be the difference between making get through the assault phase and not make it through the assault phase by having a melta gun. You know, especially if your opponent is, you know, sending in some absolutely devastating unit, and you need to kill that one model. And as we've said, sometimes all it takes to break the back of an enemy assault unit is to kill 1 or 2 models. I'm sure we can all agree that a unit of 5 Terminators charging in against you is scary. 5 Terminators is bad. But they really start to drop off in effectiveness when it becomes like 4 Terminators, and especially if it becomes 3 Terminators. I don't even worry about 3 Terminators. That's why often I would suggest, and it's not, no, I've never done it, and I'm sure most people haven't done it, but taking sort of 6 or 7 man Terminator squads rather than 5 man Terminator squads. Because then if you lose 1 or 2 to Overwatch, you've still got pretty good effectiveness. You don't lose effectiveness. But yeah, that's pretty much it, is all I can say. That's it for the Mordian Melta. I don't want to labour the point. It's a pretty it's not a basic tactic. It is an advanced. It's probably something some people wouldn't think of, and a lot of people. We've got to remember the point of me doing this tactic is to show that it's not all Cadians. In my game, in that battle report where I faced down the Blood Angels, I don't think I would have done as well. I mean, I can say for sure I wouldn't have done as well if I'd had Cadians, which sounds crazy, I know. My opponent was turn 1 charging me. What I needed to do was do as much damage as possible on Overwatch 2 to 3 turns in a row. That's what I did, and the fact that my opponent was taking significant damage in his own phase from my Overwatch basically broke the back of that army. You know, it got it over that tipping point. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think. If you guys have been using the Mordian Melta Hedge, do you prefer Plasma or do you prefer Melta? I'm still kind of a fan of the traditional Melta, but I could definitely see myself using Plasma. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Leave lots of comments, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.